In a season with the joy and the cheer and the lights, the presents, family, it's nice to have all these happy things going on around us, and to me at least, it's a fantastic time of year. But sometimes, especially the older you get, it's stressful, and it's nice to unwind from all the chaos and the bullshit that can come with it, and just laugh through all the ugliness as we try and cover it up with wrapping paper and multicolored lights. For me, this comes in the form of R-rated Christmas satire, or comedies, with my film of choice today being 2003's Bad Santa. It would be 1989's Christmas Vacation if it hadn't escaped an R rating, but for me, Bad Santa would still be a very close second. Welcome to the Entertainment Room. Here with another dark comedy that I love for many reasons, most of those reasons being Billy Bob Thornton as Willie, and Brett Kelly as he is titled The Kid, or Thurman Merman. Bad Santa is directed by Terry Zwigoff and written by Glenn Ficarra and John Requa. It's dirty, it's vulgar, other synonyms, but depending on the kind of moviegoer you are, or the person you are, you may need to cleanse your palate with this one, with a kid's Christmas classic, and or a Hallmark film afterwards. But to me, this is a witty, clever, irreverent comedy holiday classic. With constant R-rated jokes, yes, but a lot of heart, surprisingly. I'm not a fan of overly utilized sexual or vulgar humor in general, just because a lot of the time it can go overboard and just come across more weird and awkward, or just for the sake of shock factor quotes, and just not actually funny. But something about this film and how it's written just works at the end of the day. Why is Bad Santa one of my season favorites, and why has it held on to the popularity over the years? Bad Santa follows Willie, who is great at cracking safes, and him and Marcus, played by Tony Cox, is his partner in crime, posing as Santa and an elf, who work for malls just to rob them at the end of the year, to get them a major score until next Christmas. When they prepare to hit this Phoenix mall, things go a bit differently. So Billy Bob Thornton plays essentially this low-life criminal and drunk who hates himself and the world around him. While this character is heavily flawed and hard to feel sorry for, especially in the beginning, I enjoyed this performance immensely, and Willie's dialogue is hilarious, whether you agree with his worldviews or not, and I think you will find things in the story to be more relatable than you might expect. A memorable film in a lot of ways, and when I'm annoyed with something this time of year, I just kind of imagine Willie's irritated scowl that he wears on his face a lot. Whether it's the deadpan deliveries, temper tantrums, or narration, Billy Bob Thornton really thrives in this role. Again, this film is dark and finds humor in really depressing and even fucked up places, including unaliving yourself. Some quotes and jokes are not so PC, some terms and names deemed outdated, but it's actually not as bad as you might think for this time period, and for this type of film. And it's not condoning these behaviors, of course. But you'll just have to think about how this kind of really dark, twisted humor lands with you before watching it. Despite all the inappropriateness, this film has some heartwarming moments, even if it's subtle. Stellar characterization and arcs in some places. And aside from Thornton himself, one of my favorite aspects of Bad Santa is still his character Willie, but more so his relationship with Thurman. Their chemistry ultimately is phenomenal, with multiple hilarious interactions that I'm still laughing at to myself just throughout the day when I think of these different scenes. Just Willie's pessimism and outbursts that would really disturb most kids, including those Thurman's age. But Thurman is just so unbothered by the anger, and just continues to be himself. The contrasting personalities and line delivery is unparalleled. A couple other appearances that were great anyway, that I have to pay my respects to, is Bernie Mac as Security Chief Jin, as well as John Ritter as Mall Manager Bob Chapeska. Two iconic actors gone way too soon. So rest in peace to them. Their characters also brought added charm to this film, especially when they share the screen together. Just like Mr. Fucking Do-Right and his indifferent partner. Tony Cox again, as Willie's partner Marcus, delivers in his performance, with the duo's lack of ideals and criminal chemistry. When it comes to the comedy, the stuff that really works here, is the dialogue largely. Some situational comedy and stunts absolutely, but not too much to where it feels overdone or used as a crutch. I feel like a lot of comedies, especially now, have these loud, forced stunts and disastrous moments that don't always work. That's kind of all they lean on, try and get laughs out of audiences. This film has some of those moments, kind of, but it doesn't rely on that. And there are some moments here that are either a little forced, or just a little too odd or random feeling to be funny, at least to me. Plus there's like 3 sex scenes, all very brief, which is good. And not graphic really, but the fetish a character has is just really bizarre. And it's incorporated a couple times, and it's just Lauren Graham's character. I'll get to a little bit more later. But you know how you excitedly push a film on a friend or family member because it's really great, and you finally get them to watch it. But then there's those couple moments, a moment or two. There's that one scene you almost want to fast forward past. You can't explain the importance of the scene. You don't know how to explain it, really. You're just really uncomfortably trying to just get through it to get to the rest of the good stuff. And sometimes that friend or family member may just look at you and just silently judge you. It's kind of one of those things when I show this movie to people. There's also this single scene with Ajay Naidu that a lot of people do enjoy. I will preface with that. And I like him as an actor, but this scene just felt so out of left field in like a weird way, and just didn't land in its randomness. But that's just me. I mean, the scene is just never referenced again, but it's a scene that a lot of fans enjoy, so you may feel differently. And maybe it's a reference to something I wasn't getting, but I don't know. But otherwise, I don't have any major issues with the pacing or the story. I like how the film concludes. The acting is superb. Subtle facial expression switches in the more emotional moments are brilliant. It kind of help guide you through a character's head space. I could easily have watched 2 hours or more of this content, but overall it's a nice runtime at around an hour and a half. Immensely rewatchable if you like this kind of edgy and adult humor. I'm still laughing to myself reminiscing on this film, and as I was writing my notes out the other day. And I'll get into some spoilers, just with some of my favorite comedic scenes, as well as some more of the serious story elements. I highly recommend this film as one that really surprised me years ago, especially if dark humor often works for you. I think this is an incredibly well-balanced film. So now, on the spoilers. To start, on a more serious note actually, Billy Bob Thornton is again fantastic as this dry, grumpy figure, and plays these types of parts very well in general. But his acting ability really showed in the more emotional moments, and he doesn't have this big, dramatic switch in his personality. No overly sentimental moment. He's still rugged as hell by the end, but the changes he does make are pretty admirable to a certain extent, and pretty realistic compared to how he's lived over the years. Just these subtle switches in his tone, facial expressions, comments, views. One of the more notable moments is the famous escalator scene where Thornton was especially drunk, like actually drunk for the scene. He makes a huge fool of himself. It's kind of a powerful moment in a way. It's funny, especially at first. Then you kind of get these subtle glimpses of him taking in the damage that he's done, and just internally realizing how low he's gotten. I love the reflective moments and seeing him slowly accepting that he cares for Thurman. It's also hard at times to watch how he hurts others, mostly Thurman and Lauren Graham's character Sue, with his emotional unavailability. And these scenes are actually effectively devoid of over-the-top cheese, or even cheese at all, really. I like how real these interactions feel. Because they are rough around the edges, but really great and impactful. To speak on Sue, as Willie's love interest ultimately, Lauren Graham gives an excellent performance as well. I'm no prude, I'm just saying I could have done without the Santa fetish and explanation of its origins afterwards. That's kind of a brief thing anyway. Doesn't take up a lot of screen time or story. But she has a couple moments where you can tell that she really likes him a lot, and even says this, but is struggling to kind of hang on and justify staying, and trying not to come across hurt to him because of how closed off he is. She looks nearly heartbroken at one point because of this, but I did like their chemistry as a whole as the film progressed. Thurman and Willie again are hilarious together. In particular, Thurman is amusing with his odd comments and endless quotes. He holds on to a lot of innocence, and he has been through a lot. His mom died, dad is in jail. He lives in a nice home, sure, but only with a grandmother suffering from dementia, so essentially, he's pretty much alone. Seeing this relationship with Willie grow was memorable and something I didn't expect to the extent that we got. His gift to Willie was a dumb little child gift, a wooden pickle or whatever, but he did hurt himself making it and proudly gave it to him. Not to mention that he was the only one besides Sue to really show interest in him and getting to know him. Another subtle scene was so wrong overall, but held some weight, with Willie acting in a way that was not just in his own self-interest. He even stops trying to end things for himself just to defend Thurman against a bully. This, of course, involves beating up on a minor. And that's still fucked up, of course, but it's kind of a turning point for him into starting to make some better-ish choices and finding purpose and responsibility in his life. Marcus had helped him get rich each Christmas with both of their skill sets and to get each other through the next year, but they're not friends. At all. Never were. Not saying Willie didn't deserve this, but Marcus is constantly cutting him down and insulting him ruthlessly, on my dad. Many truths in his rampages, deserved to a large extent, but not something that'll help anyone. Both men simply only cared about getting the job done. Marcus, though, Tony Cox, he creates a lot of laughs as well, especially with his back and forth moments with Bernie Mac's Jen character. Some of my favorite scenes, though, had to be in general any scene where Willie is working and having kids sit on his lap as actually Santa. His annoyance and impatience. He says things to people in general that are so wrong, of course, but many of these comments being ones that have created a lot of memes, things we wish we could say to people sometimes, especially if you worked retail or food industry, healthcare, anything like that. Really any job, come to think of it. He snaps up a mom on his lunch break because she tried to bring her kid over to him. And honestly, I would have been pissed too. No, he should not have yelled at the mom and especially the kid, but the mom was entitled to bring her kid over, knowing herself that it's just an employee on a break. Just get in line like everybody else. And to be fair though, maybe he should have ditched the suit, or at least the jacket, while not actively working. Next thing, the scene where Thurman is driven home by Willie the first time is one of the best scenes in the whole film. And in general, I like how throughout, even though Willie is annoyed by Thurman for the most part, he'll still answer multiple questions from Thurman, even tripping up over his responses, trying to give him a legitimate one, before letting the anger sit in and snapping at the kid. And what's even more hilarious is that the yelling and the swearing only leads to a blank stare from Thurman, and another question. Thurman also occasionally tries to explain something or make a suggestion, and it goes from normal-ish to completely off the rails in seconds. Like at one point, he explains wanting a stuffed gorilla as a gift, one that will protect him against the kids bullying him, which is kind of normal for a kid his age-ish. Then he goes on to talk about a talking walnut, giving the gorilla orders, so it's not his fault. A couple really random moments like that. And what's even better, besides his line delivery itself, is the confused looks he gets from Willie. But Bad Santa is truly funny, with a lot of heart as well. Awesome characters and story. It was cool to read how protective director Terry Zwigoff and Billy Bob Thornton were of Brett Kelly at the time, with his young age and dealing with all this adult content. A film filled with quotables, particularly from Willie. One of my favorite quotes being when Thurman asked for a stuffed elephant initially as a gift, and Willie says, "Well, shit in one hand, wish in the other, see which fills up first." I'm going to have to find a way to incorporate that as an insult to somebody down the road. I don't know how, that quote is just awesome to me. Maybe not in this sense, but just in general. But the cherry on top to this exchange was Thurman's brief silence, followed up with an enthusiastic, "Okay." There's not much else I can really say about this film, personally. I found that it's just a film that, again, doesn't lean into over-the-top stunts to create its humor. Just this fantastic dialogue and characters. And that's really what brings me back each time. I'm honestly going to give Bad Santa an 8.7 out of 10. I may watch the sequel again, probably next year. And I remember liking parts of it, but it just wasn't as good. And I understand that's hard for a sequel to accomplish, especially to such a successful film. But it just recycles some of the same gags and jokes. And the story overall just kind of felt like rinse and repeat. But there is still content there that I like to revisit.